they've tried to create what they call constitutional laws, statutes, but the true constitution cannot be amended. It exists in perpetuity, and it's an obligation on every monarch to uphold as their principal role our absolute natural and inalienable rights. Those are our birthright, that the monarch, through their royal prerogative, establishes parliament, appoints the government. They ask their prime minister to form a government. Their sheer existence is not because we vote them in elections. It's because the monarch delegates that day-to-day activity of administering the kingdom to them.
For what we say, but everyone knows what's happened. You know, the people that are watching today are the ones that are very well aware of how many of their rights have either been taken away from them, or where we have been so distracted that we've let them go.
Your inherent birthrights, you know, cannot be given to you by an act of law or statute.
Exactly.
They're immutable, they're inviolable, they're there. They can't be, you know, the reason why the term inalienable comes about is because they cannot be given away, they cannot be traded, they cannot be taken away by contract or anything else.
So my guest today is Edward Fitzgerald. Now, Edward is the author of a really amazing book that I really recommend everyone gets, called Smoke and Mirrors, a compendium to your undoubted and inalienable rights. And you can't get much better than having the foreword written by Professor Dolores Cahill. And the last 3 years, I think, have shown all of us, certainly everyone watching channels like this, it's shown all of us just how important it is to get right back to basics, to understand how vulnerable we are in any ways, where it's like anything, we can give little bits of our rights away over time, but all these things add up, and suddenly we can realize that we're not in the state that we thought we were. And as Edward says, you know, we're seeing such a massive overreach of governments that really have gone rogue. And we're going to have a really fascinating discussion here, very importantly, to try and set the scene of where we're at the moment. But really importantly, which is why I love Edward's work so much, thank goodness for people like you, Edward, that have actually done a lot of this research for us. This is a really empowering information, everyone. So we'll be outlining what some of the issues are that we really need to be aware of, and at our peril if we ignore them any longer, as far as I'm concerned. But also, very importantly, what each and every one of us as an individual can start doing to take our power back. So with no further ado, Edward, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. I'm honoured to be your guest, and thank you for the introduction. I'm just a normal person, really. I'm just someone. I've got an engineering background, so when someone sets me a task or a problem, I try to find a solution to it in the best way that I can, and that's where I came at with writing the book. Really, I never intended to write this book. I've written another one, and I was in the process of writing a different book, completely different, separate, not even on the same topics. And last summer I was asked, or was presented with the problem where our own government, this is the government of Great Britain, was promoting ideologies that would subvert the absolute natural rights of every mother and father to choose how their children are educated. So in the book, I give the examples. I go all the way back to before Christ, to illustrate that those rights, whether we've chosen to have home tutors, whether we've it's a mentoring, or modern, like we still have these things today, modern apprenticeships.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was the ideologies that have originated from government that have been pushed through the House of Lords, and it's bounced backwards and forwards. This particular bill was called the Schools Bill, and that's what really set me off looking for, how do I not just stop this bill, stop them tweaking the words in it so that we've it's more acceptable now, but just to stop pushing the ideologies that really do subvert, and are just repugnant. I can't think of any other word. And that comes up, time and again in my research and in the book. We do have a constitution, despite what our parliament would have you believe, that it's written in multiple documents. They claim that it's written in multiple documents because they've tried to create what they call constitutional laws, statutes. But the true constitution cannot be amended. It exists in perpetuity, and it's an obligation on every monarch to uphold as their principal role our absolute, natural, and inalienable rights. Those are our birthright. And in the book, I've not, I can't take credit. These are, I'm just recounting words that some great scholars and some very esteemed men of their time, Sir Edward Coke, who was both Lord Chief Justice under Elizabeth I and James I, who actually, his writings were the foundation stones for many of the colony judiciary systems in the States. So, I've got it on record, found records of the fact that, the governor of Pennsylvania bought the first few of his reports, which described common law and the whole principles of it. So, I can't take justice for it. I'm just the one that's connected, saw the problem, and actually did the deep dive on the research to find a solution. And that solution is in our constitution, of the Great Charter of Runnymede of 1215, which has been known through the ages as the Great Charter, and then in 1217 they Latinized the words Great Charter and created. That's why we have Magna Carta. That's why a lot of people think of Magna Carta. As I said, the primary role of the monarch is they're entrusted to protect our rights. So think of it as a trust relationship. They're entrusted to protect our rights as an equal to us. And through that,
see from my facial expression just how far off course we've got with this. Yeah.
And because once you understand that the monarch, through their royal prerogative, establishes parliament, appoints the government, they ask their prime minister to form a government. Their sheer existence is not because we vote them in elections. It's because the monarch delegates that day-to-day activity of administering the kingdom to them. And so the emphasis of the book and the petition is to go straight to the monarch under these protections under the Constitution, and lay out to set the historical record straight and remind the king of his duties and obligations, that he cannot hold allegiances to foreign princes, prelates, and potentates. So I do explain all these ancient vernacular in the book. Potentate is, if you look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, it refers to a body or state that holds influence over another. So in this context, it would be the public statements and allegiances that our monarch, when he was the Prince of Wales, held with others like the World Economic Forum. So you can't, as a monarch, when you have your principal role and you say you give the coronation oath, you're reaffirming that your role is to the people, to protect them. One, you shouldn't be passing any laws that are prejudicial to our rights, period. You shouldn't be. And
how would someone define that in terms of, when you're talking about prejudicial to our rights, Edward? Is that legally defined in terms of what our rights are, or is that open for debate? Because I think what I think my rights are and what With
your rights cannot. This is
they are very
yeah.
different.
So this is where the Human Rights Acts and all these other things, your inherent birthrights, cannot be given to you by an act of law or statute.
Exactly.
They're immutable. They're inviolable. They're there. They can't be. The reason why the term inalienable comes about is because they cannot be given away. They cannot be traded. They cannot be taken away by contract or anything else. So some of those, and I list those in the petition of right as an example. And the easiest way to understand it is, Catherine, if you were on an island on your own, there was no one else, there would be no need for any laws other than the ones, that are universal.
Yeah.
The sun rises and sets. You're completely free to grow your own food, to build shelter, to have access to natural resources, water, and all the rest of it, without any external influences. It's only when we become, you have families, and you might then invoke some house rules.
Yeah.
No snacks between lunch and dinner and things, or whatever it might be. But that's essentially, if you think of it in that simplest terms, that's how historically we evolved, and these same principles exist through all communities throughout the world. We may call them different things. We would have formed rules as small villages or small communities, to make sure that we're good neighbours, that we don't do wrong by each other. Historically, we've appointed chiefs or elders of our communities to act as the person that calls assemblies to deal with any disputes.
Yeah.
And this was the early form of our court systems, and that's how we had our 12 oaths for our jury, and to ensure that they were independent, that they were able to not be swayed in their judgment of somebody. Somebody may have been found guilty of an act against one of the local rules or laws, but if that local law or rule was repugnant to their rights, the ability to feed their family, or their free movement, without hindrance, then that's what those, we go back to the basics. That's what's repugnant to our rights. And again, going back to the right to educate our children, the right to hold a faith, the right to have free speech. These are the things that have sort of have developed as our birthrights. And so the part of the petition is I use a term called nunc pro tunc, which is Latin for now for then, which means that it's retroactive. So it doesn't matter what may have been agreed on your behalf or whatever. It's a stake in the ground for the individual to say, these are what I understand to be my natural rights, and I'm claiming them now, and I'm claiming to the highest public servant in the land. So that if at any point you try to push something on me that I don't agree with, that's repugnant to those rights, lawfully, I've made the statement. You've got to rebut that.
Yeah. It's so applicable to what's going on now. I mean, everyone knows we're on YouTube, so we have to be careful what we say, but everyone knows what's happened. The people that are watching today are the ones that are very well aware of how many of their rights have either been taken away from them, or where we have been so distracted that we've let them go, which is a very interesting point as well. So this book, when people get this book, and I would so encourage everyone to do it because it's incredibly good value and it really does help so much. It's really going to help them, one, understand what some of these rights are, but most importantly, what they can do now. So talk us through that process, because you've already had someone use this in Canada, haven't you?
I have. They did know that I was writing the book, so that, but within, he said within 12 hours of the book being made available, he'd already cited it as evidence in a case against a corrupt judge.
Wow.
So it's on the public record already. So this is part of my, regardless of this book, part of my value, as it were, over the last 3 years has been about trying to help people be self-empowered. We too freely give away our power. We're
Yes.
not responsible. People want their freedom, but they're not necessarily willing to take the responsibility for that freedom.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the governments around the world are not different in that. They've made everybody reliant
Mm.
to a lesser or greater degree on them and the state and the system and everything else. So, I mean, this book. I was blown away within 17 days of me making it public, and I did struggle because it got corrupted when I uploaded it to Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I had to pull it off. So, if anybody's watching and you've bought it, people, I think there was about 40 odd people that bought the book and it's corrupted, please email me and I'll send you a clean version.
And all Edward's details, of course, and how to get the book, etc., will, as always, be in the description box below. Yeah.
Yeah.